Welcome to Module 1. In this module, we will be going over food and kitchen safety and food storage guidelines. I know you want to get right into learning the basics of cooking, but I wouldn't do you justice if I didn't teach you first the basic principles of food and kitchen safety. Without this essential module, foodborne illness can occur as cross-contamination within the cooking can happen very easily if this basic knowledge is not put into daily practice. One of the first courses I was required to take during culinary school was food safety. We even had to get certified here in the United States before continuing with the rest of our cooking labs. This is the not so fun part of this course. It gets better after this, I promise. So here are the brief and important points I want you to learn around kitchen safety. First, we will learn about foodborne illnesses and how to avoid it. Then we were going to learn about avoiding cross-contamination. Then we will learn about proper hand washing, the temperature danger zone, practicing FIFO, or first in, first out, practicing the proper thawing methodology, and of course, very important, food allergies. So let's get into it. Okay, so how do we avoid foodborne illnesses? And first of all, what are they? Foodborne illnesses are disease contracted from the mishandling of food, or from poor food safety practices at the source. If one experiences general nausea, abdominal pain, or stomach distress immediately or a few hours after consuming food, that indicates the contraction of a foodborne illness, or it may indicate that. There are three types of foodborne illnesses: biological, chemical, and physical, meaning that's how a foodborne illness can happen. Typically, the most common contraction is biological, meaning some sort of a pathogen or bacteria has contaminated the food and then entered the body. No one likes this, right? To avoid foodborne illnesses, proper personal hygiene, obtaining shellfish from certified waters, having a good washing procedure of vegetables, storing food appropriately, cooking food to safe temperatures, and maintaining a clean working environment are all safety practices that will avoid getting yourself or other people sick. So in short, chemicals can get into food, pathogens or bacteria can get into food, or something physical like plastic or paper or aluminum can get into food and contaminate it. That can cause harm into anybody's body. You as an athlete, you as a coach, you as a person that is cooking for other people, or as a chef that are cooking for other people, need to make sure that you keep a tidy space like the one you see here at all times. And of course, that you yourself practice good hygiene and good safety standards. Does that make sense? Let's go into the next step: avoiding cross-contamination. Many foodborne illnesses are a result of unsanitary practices in the kitchen, unfortunately. Cross-contamination occurs when disease-causing elements are transferred from the surface to the food. Food is at a greatest risk of cross-contamination during the preparation stage. Follow these practices to avoid cross-contamination. Make sure you're taking notes. If you are sick, avoid cooking for other people, as pathogens can be passed onto food very easily. As well, you must wash your hands thoroughly after your hands have come in contact with a foreign surface, the face, hair, eyes, mouth, or if you're handling raw foods. When handling raw foods, especially proteins, wash your hands after every use. As well, you need to make sure that you wash every single surface where there has been contact with raw food or there have been any drippings coming from raw animal proteins. Meaning, if you are using your cutting board to cut raw poultry, you must wash your countertop, cutting board, knife, and hands after handling the raw protein. Otherwise, cross-contamination occurs and sickness will most likely happen from that interaction. Always separate work areas and cutting boards from raw and cooked foods. Lastly, all foods must be stored carefully to prevent contact between raw and cooked items. Hopefully that wasn't too quick, but in short, foodborne illnesses happen for the most part through cross-contamination of raw and cooked items. Or if we're going to talk about a chemical or physical contamination, that is when a chemical, when you're using to clean, happens to touch the food, or when a paper, glass, or something happens to land in your food without you noticing. So I know this may be an overkill, but we're gonna talk about proper hand washing techniques. This probably brings a bit of a COVID lockdown memory, but this is an absolute necessary reminder. Before I show you how to properly wash your hands, remember that to safely handle food, you must wash your hands after going to the restroom, handling raw protein ingredients, touching your face, mouth, beard, or other surfaces outside of the kitchen. Here is the proper method for washing hands. Wet your hands with hot water for 3 to 5 seconds. Lather your hands with soap and wash your hands, rubbing the back, palms, fingertips, and thumbs thoroughly for about 20 seconds to a minute. Then rinse your hands in hot water for 5 to 15 seconds to remove all soap and dirt away. Air dry or dry hands with paper towels. Let's talk about the temperature danger zone. Keeping foods out of the danger zone is critical to avoiding foodborne illnesses. Most pathogens need to grow in major quantities to affect the body, and this happens when the temperature allows for rapid growth. The friendliest environment for rapid growth of a pathogen is 41 degrees Fahrenheit or 5 degrees Celsius to 135 degrees Fahrenheit or 57 degrees Celsius, aka the temperature danger zone. Remember this. Most pathogens will be destroyed above 135 Fahrenheit 57 Celsius or will be severely slowed down below 41 Fahrenheit 5 degrees Celsius. By storing foods outside the danger zone at all times, one avoids both potential food pathogens and the toxins that these may create within the food. As well, aside from storing foods outside of the TDZ, foods must be handled properly when being cooled down. For example, when cooking foods to be used later, these will have to be cooled down within a specific amount of time. To cool foods down safely, these need to be stored and cooled down below 41 degrees Fahrenheit or 5 degrees Celsius as quickly as possible and completed within 4 hours. As well, it is best practice that you cool down liquids and semi-solid foods by placing them in a metal container. Place another metal container underneath it with icy water and ideally inside the fridge, and stir the liquids constantly. This will help cool the food faster and diminish the risk of a pathogen growth. Now, on the opposite side of the coin, when reheating foods, all foods should be reheated to at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit, 74 degrees Celsius for a minimum of 15 seconds. That is textbook definition. Now, if you're cooking and holding hot foods, these should be held above 135 Fahrenheit, 57 Celsius. Holding cold foods should be held under ice on temperatures below 41 degrees Fahrenheit or 5 degrees Celsius. You see a pattern here? I'm repeating myself. As long as foods are held below or above the TDZ, you ensure food safety and diminish the potential bacterial growth. Keep this always in the forefront of your mind. You don't want to keep foods hot or at room temperature for more than 4 hours. And in real practice, more than 1 hour, as that can severely affect the quality of the food. Only take out a food out from the fridge when you're ready to work with it, ready to cook it, or ready to produce it. At home, I suggest that you use your freezer to cool down foods faster, especially if you're cooking proteins in bulk. You can then transfer the foods to your freezer to the cooler and store them there until they're completely cold. And after you're done preparing it, make sure you store it either under ice or on the fridge. You have full control of this, so make sure you take your precautions. We are halfway through this module. Thank you for your patience. Let's get on to the next subject. Next, let's talk about FIFO. FIFO means first in, first out. This is a safety practice of rotating your food, which dictates using the first product you bought or cooked instead of the newest. Does that make sense? For example, if pork is cooked at 2 p.m. and then a second batch is cooked at 4 p.m., I'm giving you a restaurant example, but the 4 p.m. is closer to you, one must use the 2 p.m. first, because the oxidizing process began first for the first cooked product versus the second cooked product. Or if you bought eggs the 13th and you bought a second set of eggs the 23rd, you must finish the eggs that you bought the 13th first. Practicing FIFO will always ensure spoilage is not occurring and that you're rotating your food properly. I personally always put the newly purchased food behind the first purchased food so that I can finish what I bought first and make sure that my rotation of food is following FIFO. Do this with all your foods. That way you are using what's oldest first, you're reducing your waste, and you're reducing the potential of a foodborne illness. Let's get on to the next subject. The second to last topic that we're going to talk about in this module is proper thawing methodology. There are many myths about how to properly thaw food, so let me go over the proper methods. When thawing frozen foods, you should never thaw them at room temperature, especially proteins. This creates a perfect breeding environment for bacteria, as we just saw on the last point, and can lead to sickness. Here are the best practices for thawing. Thaw overnight by removing your frozen foods and placing them in the refrigerator. Always place frozen foods in a bowl or a baking sheet to avoid any moisture or drippings from contaminating other foods. If this first option is not possible, thawing foods placed inside a container, tightly wrapped under a stream of cold water, about 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 Celsius or below, will thaw the food in no time. The stream ensures the circulation of the water and maintains the temperature of the water higher than the frozen food, because the frozen food is at 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Lastly, if you are to cook an individual portion of a protein immediately after thawing, then thawing it on the microwave is acceptable. I checked. Select the microwave's thawing option. As well, always avoid cooking large portions of meat from a frozen state, as this will overcook your food. And listen, I grew up in Bolivia, in South America, in a third world country, and my family would always leave food out overnight to thaw. We seldom got sick. I don't have memory of any situation where I got sick from eating our food. So in practice, sometimes luck may be on your side, but to ensure that yourself, your athletes, your family, your friends are always safe when they eat your food, follow these thawing methods to ensure peace of mind. All right, we're at the end of this module. Thank you so much for your patience. The last topic that we're going to talk about is food allergies. Food allergies are a top of mind consideration to always have when cooking, especially for customers or other people. The most common and top 9, not 8, 9 allergens are the following: peanuts, tree nuts, milk or dairy, eggs, wheat, soy, fish, shellfish, and now sesame. As of 2023, in the United States, sesame is the 9th mandatory allergen. Avoiding cross-contamination between foods that contain any of the 9 mentioned allergens is a safety practice that must be always followed. A true food allergy is nothing to fool with, as the introduction of an allergen can contaminate the food and create a light to severe reaction in people, leading to potential hospitalizations or, in the worst cases, death. You don't want to have that in your hands. Food preferences, on the other hand, are typically seen as foods that people try to stay away from for one reason or another. It is important to clarify always which food is an actual allergy and which is a preference, for the safety and well-being of those consuming the food. In practice, when you're cooking food and you know that you're dealing with a major allergen, make sure you always wipe down your station, your cutting board, your knife, wash your hands, and any other surface that the allergen may have had contact with. I can't stress this enough. Be super careful and make sure you always have a consideration for food allergies. And that's it for this module. You made it through. Always keep in mind all the safety practices we have seen in this module to avoid cross-contaminating food and for safe food handling. Now let's get into the fun part, and I'll see you in module 2.